Hello, welcome back. And we're playing another game of Mechabellum, or doing a replay. We're going to be talking about Fort and Fang. Today, we're going to go a little bit into a deeper dive. We'll be jumping around in this game, showing maybe some changes that I would do in the future, and how we execute. Our opponent is Andros, a missile specialist with the Void Eye start with the Mustangs. They're playing in a very standard position, picked up 2 crawlers, while we are going for, I believe, what is going to be 5 Fang start. Yeah. So the main goal of Fang Fort, or Fang Core, is you want to get levels on your Fangs as early as possible, so you want to throw your tanking units in front so your Fangs can eat up that juicy XP and survive a little bit longer. So your tanks become your tanks and your chaff become your core. It's a little bit of flipping things upside down and backwards from what we would typically think is normal gameplay, where your chaff units chaff and your tank units would be the core in the early game. Obviously, if we were playing more standard, we might pick up marksman, but obviously marksman not the best into this board. It would be good against the Void Eyes. But as we continue on with our Fang Fort build, our Fang core, we have built up on round 2 some defensive plays here. There's a chance on round 2 that you can go range. That is probably what you want to be doing. So we'll just give that a show. This is a very interesting card right here. Yeah, so the reason why we didn't really have the opportunity to go for the range here is because we won't be able to shield our Fangs appropriately. So this would be the alternate setup for this round 2 here. Unlock whatever. And this is what we would do instead. It might turn out better. We'll see how this actually goes. We'll speed it up. We'll see how much damage we do. We'll compare it to what actually happened in the game. Just for a reference point to see that since we did not go for the range, what would be better. So it looks like we have the potential to quite possibly win this round with the tower debuff here. Let's see if we do the same win in our actual game. Great, so we did 137 damage, and let's get back to the replay here. We'll just speed up. We put our one shield in roughly the same spot. The reason why we put the shield on the right side rather than the left is we had the tanks on the left there, and we did end up selling the tanks on the right. So we want to protect these Fangs with the shield, and with the range that will happen, and they'll be able to kill this tower. So in this version of the game, with the sledges still alive and the Fangs behind the towers instead, we lose this round. So just minor changes in Fort Fang, following the principles of what you need is very important. Getting range on round 2 can win you rounds that you should not win. But you have, at this point, you've committed, and in many ways, you've already committed anyway, because look at how many Fangs there are already on the board, right? You've already committed to the strat, so you might as well go for the round 2 range. Now, since we're playing from slightly behind, we'll continue on here. It looks like we're ignoring the shields here, unless we sell and pop 2 shields down this turn. That is very possible. We do not. So we've gone for the range on this round 3, so there shouldn't be maybe much of a difference between our round 2. But our opponent does have more units on the board. We missed out on some XP that we could have potentially this round from round 2 on our Fangs. But we are kind of catching up here, which is nice. The Stormcallers come out as a nice addition for our opponent, though their long-term efficacy is well, fairly good into Fangs can become a problem, especially in a head-to-head matchup, because the forts that eventually come out, which we actually get for free this round, which is so nice, um, might be in a bit of a problem stuck on the wrong units. Um, Now, our opponent did take up forts as well, which is relatively good here. I wouldn't, again, you're probably looking at building Mustangs and Melters into this kind of board, just for the long-term benefits that you will be having a better strategy. It's just a matter of placement and positioning. But this is very standard, very obvious what's coming, I think. So if you know the answer, you should be going into it right away, and that forces this player to adapt. And I think it's very hard to adapt this build to be appropriate in the long term against Melter Mustang, or maybe even Ball Wraith, but we'll talk about that as well in the second game in the video. So we end up losing this round 4 here, as I would say we're a full round behind anyway. We should be picking up a couple forts here. We did take the absorption module. We're going to be placing a fort here. And basically he's just going to be kind of an anchor for this flank until we eventually potentially build out along this wall, this flank here, and push in a big brick, encaging them in. Our opponent does take the underground threat, which is a bit of a problem for me, but on the other hand, that's just more stuff for my Fangs to shoot at and feed XP, get XP for, which is really nice. We go for this anti-missile device, which is like, it's huge if we win this round and it doesn't get destroyed. Even if we lose the round and it doesn't get destroyed, it's okay, because it's just adding, you know, negative value to these Stormcallers here. But it looks like we're going to lose this round here. We're just not quite up to speed yet. We definitely need Mech Rage as soon as possible at this point. So we're playing a little bit behind. We didn't actually tech our things in the right order. But even still, we're going to push on through. We're going to take levels where they are and where we need them. It looks like I'm deciding... So this is a round we can decide whether Mech Rage or Armor Piercing is better. We can do a replay of that as well and see what happens. Let's do that right now. So round 6, we're going to see if Mech Rage is the answer. We leveled everything. We took the Farseers and we got an extra fort, and we're going into the flank. So Farseer, we sell one. We go Mech Rage. We probably want the level. We want the levels. We want this. And this is probably what we would be doing here. We'll take the speed. And the question is, where do we place the Farseer? I think in the actual game I placed it over here somewhere, so I'm going to do all the way back. And we have a missile. This is a great missile right here. Take out some of the Mustangs along with this big gun. So we'll see what this looks like for this turn. Our opponent goes for the double tap Sabertooths, kind of doubling down with the fort there. Both kind of do the same thing for them. So it seems a little odd to play like that into this. So this is, remember, the one iteration with the Mech Rage versus AP. So we're just going to take a look and see what the difference is here. So this round we end up winning with 2 giants and a handful of crawlers. We deal 765 damage. And then in the real game, we'll see that we went with AP a little bit cheaper. Allows us to pump out a little bit more units after we decide to go back and change to AP. We've been testing AP to see how good it is, but there is probably a better order for the long term for this type of a build, and it seems to be range, mech rage, and AP might be the way to go. It's definitely range first, as we saw from redoing our round 2 deploy. So this is with AP. And it appears AP is not enough here this round for 2 giants to survive. Maybe we survive with 1. So very similar result. The difference was a giant difference. So take it as you will. I would suggest that outcome suggests that mech rage is better first. And then you go for the armor piercing maybe later on, like this round, whenever I end up clicking it. In this game would be the time you would be clicking AP, and of course you'd be clicking AP probably a little bit sooner in some ways because mech rage is more expensive, especially since we're getting it in the next round, so that's not that big of a deal that we went AP and then immediately into the mech rage. So just based off of the round before when we tested with the mech rage, this should be a much better round because now we have damage and attack speed. And as you can see, we are surviving this round with 3 giants from the looks of it, and this item production I think is one of the best items for fort pushing, other than of course something like absorb module, which is by far probably one of the best. I would suggest Mustang production line is probably the worst. Steel ball production is probably number 1. Followed up close second for the unit production ones is the tanks. I think both of them are good in the sense that they just provide extra chaff for your board continuously for the rest of the game. Now, yes, you are feeding experience, but it's only level 1 unit, so I don't think that's that big of a deal. The Mustangs are definitely not needed. It is a waste of money in this case because they're just doing the job of your Fangs, where something like at least the steel balls are tanking for your units and distracting units like Stormcallers or even Melters later on if that is our opponent's response. And now when I'm talking about those production items, I'm only talking about the production items. I do think other items are stronger in general if you can afford them, but sometimes you can't with this type of build. Our opponent has gone for the Melter, which I believe is the right response, but is it a little too late for our opponent to do anything at this point with our triple tech Fangs and the potential for us to be clicking Fang production or even Rocket Punch? So we'll see if our opponent has any kind of response. Our opponent does not go for the much there. There's a few options. I don't think any of them succeed in any great manner. We have taken the Rocket Punch. I saw acid on the ground and thought, oh, my forts get to walk and stand in acid and shoot rockets really quickly. Sounds good to me. So that was part of the plan there. And then we're just going to be widening out our board to help just mitigate this side getting completely pummeled by these 2 Stormcallers and whatever else ends up coming out on the board. And also being a little afraid of a unit drop coming in or units coming in from the flank and just getting our tower before we're able to do anything. So here our opponent does find one of the key components to the right response. It just took them too long to get into it. Maybe eventually with more HP they'll be able to come out on top against this build. But the main problem with our opponent's board is really, I would say these sabers really are the biggest problem. They're not needed at all on the board. If we exchange these sabers for Mustangs with range, I think this board might be, I think it's a little too far gone. We probably need another Melter at least here. But in earlier rounds, it might be salvageable to get out. I do believe energy absorption will be a requirement eventually, especially against the punch for these Melters. So they are healing through that. And anyway, we'll get on to our next game in just a second here. Okay, so we're in our second game now. Our opponent is Quick Supply Specialist with Mustangs and Hound. We have Steel Bull and Fang as a cost control specialist. So we're actually going to be setting up in a headbutt here for our Fang Fort build coming in, which is kind of nice because we'd rather not be asymmetrical if we can help it. And we're going to be going with 4 Fangs and a Crawler here, and we're going to be placing everything up on the line. I do not recommend... I'll tell you later when it becomes relevant, actually. So this first round, we're just going to get shredded by, you know, all these chaff clear units. There's no way we win this first round. It's just what you have to expect coming into it. Our opponent goes for the Rhino drop, and so do we. There's a argument to be made to go for the Elite Fang card that was dropped here. I've gone through each scenario where we take this tech, and this tech. Each way you do it, it doesn't matter. You end up losing by about the same amount, about 780 damage. The only way that you, about 1,000 damage. The only way you get down to about 780 damage taken is by actually winning this Rhino drop here and getting the tower before his Rhino gets there. My positioning is slightly off. If you're slightly more accurate than I am here, you get to the tower slightly faster and you take only 800 damage on this round. So the tech pickup here, we picked up the cheaper one so we could have more deploys. That is the logic behind it. You can go with any of these techs, the range. The reason I went for the AP is I figured I could do more damage. Turns out, maybe I do. Maybe I get more XP on these Fangs than if I go with Mech Rage or Range. I haven't tested, or I haven't looked at the specific damage numbers per round for the round, which one actually gives us the most XP. So that is something for consideration in the future. As you can see, they beat us out for the tower timing. And that is all she wrote for the round. The nice thing about this is we get a free sell here of the Scorpion. Allows us to get 2 forts in, and if we really want to, we can mass recruit an extra Fang behind, or behind a tower, or we can drop defensive missiles this round just to protect ourselves. We end up placing an aggressive missile, and we do take the speed spec. We drop this missile here for the same reason this missile's here. It's to make sure our fort gets an early lock on. The reason why we put it off onto the flank is we figure our opponent's not going to do both. But if they did, I guess that's unfortunate for us. We don't get the early lock, and it turns out to be a disaster potentially in that front line, or it just takes us a little bit longer to chew through. With the early fort here, we're able to potentially eke out maybe a win with this fort here on the left here. If we're really lucky, he gets a level. But it looks like he's going to barely survive or barely go down. Either way, big if we win, dealing some actual damage, and we get it. Lots of good cards offered there. I believe I probably should have taken the Ion instead of this item, but the eco math turns out really nicely if we don't, especially with having to missile twice, 3 times. Early on, our opponent goes for the Wraith this turn. And that proves that once all my Fangs die off, I have no way to upshoot. And eventually this fort shall go down. A minor inconvenience for our build. Lots offered here. Missile strike was offered. We take the mech rage, which is the way to go, as we are going to be going barrier. It is probably the most damage efficient way to get our fangs to do their job of killing these wraiths. I don't have any problems with this. I guess our biggest problem is defending the back. That's why we have a secondary missile here. And we do land our missile strike on an appropriate target to help push our advantage. Our fort here is getting target locked, should be going down. Our opponent has not clicked fortified target lock. And it looks like we're going to be able to at least take down one wraith, maybe two if we're lucky. And it looks like with that tower debuff we are lucky, as the wraith is just out of range of these 5 fangs until it moves there and it takes out 3 of the 5. Lots of cards are offered here. We end up going for these phantom rays, and we are going to be selling one of them, and we're going to be going for a cheeky tower push here, and our phantom rays should help us kill some of these wraiths. We end up buying a couple more fangs, put behind the towers, just to help defend. We put the rhino here to draw the crawlers so our phantom rays can get in. Our opponent did loan this turn. It's a little early for a loan, but if it ends up working out for them, great. I do not recommend building Fort Fang into this type of a board. I believe it does counter it. But if your opponent doesn't know what buttons they need to press, you can still come out with a win. As the rocket punch really shuts down the steel balls quite effectively. Man, I wish I didn't bump my mic there. And then in this round here, it is time for us to actually have a proper response. So I'm going to show something before anything actually happens. The wraiths are too much of a problem. The fangs cannot deal with it. We'll take the amp core like we did in the game. We will sell this like we did in the game. You'll see in the replay when we get there that this is what I did. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be elite recruiting 3 units, picking this up, and we're going to get 2 marksmen, 1 for each wraith. We're going to be placing a level 2 fort right here. And we're going to be taking speed, and we're going to probably missile out in the front here. I believe that's probably the way to do this. Well, we have to missile this for sure. And let's missile the middle one. Yeah, let's go with the middle one. I guess I could have put a defensive missile here. That's what I could have done as well, which might be the more safe play. So our marksmen do get locks on, which should help us kill these wraiths, which are the problem on our board at the moment. We take them down. We have a couple forts alive. They have a couple steel balls alive, so they are going to take some of our board down. But we are going to win the round. And then we got to see what this will transpire as in the actual game of what happened. So just minor efficiencies here and there. You should respond to Wraith with AA Marksman, especially if you're on the line, and they're on the line as well. It's just the way to play the game in this scenario. Anyway, so we'll see what we actually do. I believe we go for range to see. This was kind of a testing game for me in a lot of ways, to see if this was enough to help with the Wraith. But the Wraiths are level 2, but I mean, they're level 2 Fangs, they're triple tech, like, you know, it should be okay, but I guess, you know, we'll see how it turns out. So in this scenario, we kill all the ground units, but we are left with 2 wraiths that will win the board for our opponent here. So some minor misplays here. This play, we both take the Wasp card, and this is the turn I do get my own marksman as well, because they are the solution to the problem that is the Wraith on the board. We end up getting our 2 Wraiths after we level, or our 2 marksmen after we level everything up that needs levels. We drop our 2 missiles in the front. We get our marksmen lined up on the left, right between these slots. We missiled out our opponent's the Wasp, but they get eaten by the Wraith, but we end up killing the Wraith with 2 giants alive, which is pretty nice. We are going to be taking the Javelin instead of the Storm here. For the simple fact, we have a lot of HP and shields here, and I think just nuking part of the board, like some units off of it, makes it much easier for me just to push through. While the Storm does slow but consistent damage, sure, yes. There's not really a great place for me to put it without hurting my own units. My opponent clearly has no disregard for even his own Wraith here that is in the bubble that can be hit. So it's just interesting to see that Storm was chosen. I understand the idea behind it. I would have probably gone for the Javelin trying to take out these marksmen here, as they are definitely the problem on the board for my opponent at the moment. Yeah, our opponent placing these Wasps right on the line is very curious to me. It makes it very easy for me just to drop a missile here and take it out. Which is exactly what we do. We get a couple more marksmen with AA. We do take the double tap this turn, so when they do connect, it's going to be amazing. And we did get a level 2 fortress on the right here. So we take out the Wraith and some steel balls and some of the fire badgers. We get a lot of value out of it. And after the aftermath, all but one of our marksmen dies. We take out all of the Wraiths with ease now on our unit, and now it's just about expanding our board. We can expand up, we can expand right. It doesn't really matter too much what our game plan is from here. Our opponent takes armor instead of mective for some reason. I don't understand the logic behind it. You're getting hit by a rocket, does 12,000 damage times 3 for this one, times 2, times 1, times 2, times 2. So I don't know how these steel balls think they're going to be surviving with just armor. And this is how you beat. This is how you play Fort Fang. I don't see how this is going to survive after we won the last round. There's no real change on the board other than armor. Armor doesn't really do anything, as we just talked about with the rocket punch, which is actually clearing the balls for the most part. Our opponent takes a couple shields. We put down a bunch of missiles across the line, clear out the first line of crawlers. And we walk away handily with a good victory here. There is one thing I do want to do here. And this is why I don't recommend playing this build into this type of a board. Is it 3? Yeah, we can probably get away with 3. What am I doing with this last 100? Probably take out this marksman. Yeah, what are we doing with this I guess we just drop it wherever. So if you press the right text on the right units, I definitely misclicked something somewhere, but this is shows the potential of why you don't play this build into Steel Ball Wraith. Don't tell my opponent that he pressed the wrong tech. I don't want them knowing. Don't let anybody know. This is our little secret right here. Anyway, thanks for watching. This has been Fang Fort with C Mully. I'll see you next time.